What's up, Detroit Lions fans? I hope you're all having a splendid day. Today, I'll be coming to you with part one as to why Matthew Stafford is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. Stafford is coming off probably the worst season of his career since his rookie season. It has left a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not Stafford is good enough to lead the Lions to that long-craved Super Bowl win. Well, I'm here to tell y'all that he is absolutely good enough. Throughout this series, I'll be breaking down multiple reasons as to why Stafford can win us a Super Bowl. We'll be breaking down his supporting cast, or lack thereof, how he makes players around him better, how he makes not that great of head coaches and not that great of offensive coordinators look much better than they are, and that he is not the problem with the Lions. So to start the series off, we're going to be talking about how Stafford makes players around him better. Now, I bet some of you are thinking, wait, he does? And my answer is yes, he absolutely does. To prove it to you, I'm going to show you guys stats of various players that Stafford has thrown to over the years, and what their stats were before Stafford was their quarterback, and their stats with Stafford as their quarterback. We'll start off with Marvin Jones. Jones, under Stafford, has played 40 games, amassed 151 receptions, 2,539 receiving yards, and 18 receiving touchdowns. Now let's look at what he did with Dalton. Please note that I put an asterisk because I excluded the games in which Dalton did not finish, and I also excluded Marvin Jones' rookie season. Jones played 28 games with Dalton. In those games, Jones had 98 receptions, 1,307 receiving yards, and 14 receiving touchdowns. As you guys can see, Jones' production under Stafford was higher than it was under Dalton. The only thing that Jones was producing at a higher clip with Dalton was with receiving touchdowns. However, 4 of those 14 touchdowns that Jones caught came in one game against the New York Jets in Week 8 of the 2013 season. That is why I decided to make note of how Jones had 4 multi-touchdown games under Stafford and only 1 with Dalton. It is also worth noting that Marvin Jones under Stafford had his best career season with Stafford in 2017 when he had 1,101 receiving yards and had a career-high 18 yards per reception. So we've looked at the effect that Stafford has had on Marvin Jones. Now let's look at the effect that he had on Calvin Johnson. I'd like to note that I omitted the Lions' Week 3 loss in 2012 to the Titans and the Week 5 loss in 2015 to the Cardinals in games that Stafford was Johnson's quarterback because Stafford got hurt and was able to finish the game against the Titans, and he got benched against the Cardinals in the third quarter. I would also like to note that I omitted Megatron's rookie season and the Week 5 loss to the Steelers in 2009, where Calvin Johnson left the game in the first quarter due to an injury from the column displaying how he performed with quarterbacks other than Stafford throwing him the ball. But, as you can see, he had a similar effect on Calvin Johnson as he averaged more yards per game and had a slightly higher yards per reception under Stafford than he did under Culpepper, Kitna, Hill, Stanton, or Orlovsky, or any other backup Lions quarterback that I forgot to name. Now, I think some of you might be thinking, well, it looks like he barely had an effect on him. But also keep in mind that while I did not include Calvin Johnson's rookie season under the other quarterbacks column, I did include Stafford's rookie season under Stafford's column. So if I omitted Johnson's rookie year, I would have to think it's only fair that I omit Stafford's. So let's do that. As you can see, if we take out Stafford's rookie season, Calvin Johnson's yards per game and yards per reception go up. Not by a bunch, but I think you all see my point. Calvin Johnson was a better receiver with Stafford throwing him the ball than he was with any of the prior Lions quarterbacks. And before we move on, I'd like to make one other note. All of Calvin Johnson's first-team All-Pro selections were with Stafford quarterbacking him. And I'd also like to note that all of Calvin Johnson's best seasons absolutely came under Stafford. His highest yardage years and yards per reception years all came under Stafford. Here's a list of other receivers that Stafford positively affected. As you can see, in 2014, Golden Tate had a Pro Bowl season, his lone Pro Bowl year, I might add, with 99 receptions, which was a career high, and 1,331 receiving yards, which was also a career high. And in 2011, Tony Scheffler had a career high in touchdown receptions. And if you look at Nate Burleson, his career averages are 41.7 yards per game, 3.4 receptions per game, and 12.3 yards per reception. With Stafford, though, Burleson averaged more yards per game and more receptions per game. He did have a lower yards per reception, and you can knock Stafford for that if you really want to, but then I think you're really missing the big picture. Stafford has consistently had a positive effect on the receivers that he has thrown to. Now, the one Lion that I can think of that left Stafford and started performing better was Eric Ebron. Now, Ebron was a Pro Bowler this year, but is he really that much better now that he has Luck throwing him the football? Kind of. As you can see, he averages a little more than 4 extra yards per game, and it does add up. But remember, Stafford had Calvin Johnson and Marvin Jones averaging more than 15 extra yards per game. And I know the touchdown differentials are huge, but also remember, in 2015, Calvin Johnson was leading the team in touchdown receptions. And in 2016, Anquan Bolden was leading the team in touchdown receptions. And then in 2017, Marvin Jones became the team's leader in touchdown receptions. And another thing that I think should be mentioned is that tight ends always catch a lot of touchdowns with Luck. Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen led the Colts in touchdown receptions with 8 apiece in 2014. And in 2016, Dwayne Allen was tied for second on the Colts with 6 touchdown receptions. Dwayne Allen in 7 seasons only has 1,564 career receiving yards. Luck likes to go to tight ends for touchdowns. Stafford, generally speaking, prefers to go to receivers for touchdowns. And before I make my final point, I'd like to compare Ebron's best season with the Lions and his lone year with the Colts. As you can all see, Ebron actually averaged more yards per game in his best season with the Lions. And he also had a higher yards per reception in his best season with the Lions. The big difference, that admittedly probably is the most important difference, is the touchdown receptions. But we already went over that. Stafford preferred going to receivers for touchdowns more than tight ends. He did get Tony Shepler to have a career-high touchdown receptions in 2011, but generally speaking, the players who lead the Lions in touchdown receptions are receivers. So, looking at this, I don't think it's fair to say that Ebron left and started playing for an immensely more competent quarterback. It's not like Stafford's just throwing him a million inaccurate passes. I just think it was time for Eric Ebron to go. I mean, the dude was getting booed by the fans. He had to go, people. He 100% could not stay in Detroit. His welcome was up. So what does all of this mean? Well, I'll say real fast, it doesn't mean that Stafford is as good as Tom Brady, or that he's as good as Drew Brees. I'm not even saying any of this makes him an all-time great. And this doesn't mean that you can just give Stafford a bunch of below-average NFL receivers and he's going to turn them into All-Pros or turn them into Pro Bowlers. But it does mean Stafford absolutely has a positive effect on his receivers. We already went over how Calvin Johnson, Nate Burleson, Tony Shepler, even Ebron, they all had a career high in at least one receiving stat during their time with Stafford. So does it mean that he's going to make Jesse James have a career high in some type of stat? Is Jesse James even going to thrive with Stafford? Or Danny Amendola? Is Danny Amendola going to do good with Stafford? Or if the Lions draft a receiver, draft a tight end, how will they do? Will Stafford make them look good? I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately. But what I do know is that Stafford 100% makes his receivers better. And if these guys thrive with Stafford, I think he deserves a little bit of credit for it. Well, that will be all for this episode of why Matthew Stafford is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a great day. Stay tuned for part 2.